Good evening, everyone. Well, you haven't been seeing us around for a while as things have been going, I should say, as the usual. But there's been a lot of mix-up potpourri being created with all the excitement that has happened, specifically with Monaco. But I think the month of May has had its madness to it. And with us today, we have two of our regular panelists, Diksharth and Naren. Welcome to the show, guys. This is our episode number 47 of Toast the Torque as we cover the F1 races as it goes around the world and share with you our insights of the races. Probably not as dramatic as Drive to Survive, but we try to give you the inner scoop to the extent that we can. So, guys, both of you, the May Madness, what are your takes on the races that we have had so far before we sort of drill down into Monaco? Naren, we could start off with you.
Okay, let's start off with Miami. Miami, obviously, the fan favorite was Lando, and we really can see that the McLaren is closing by inch. And we also can see that Forza Ferrari, they are also, coming closer to Max or Red Bull inch by inch. So, which means that all the upgrades that McLaren and Ferrari were doing for their car are obviously working, and they are closing up with Max. So, this is with respect to Miami. If you then go to Imola, we initially thought, okay, the FP1, FP2, FP3, Max did not actually make it on the top. So we thought, okay, he would not come. But eventually, unfortunately, he was only sandbagging the entire moment. And then he started to go off in the qualifying. And then he started to also go way further ahead in qualifying. But what kept him on the toes, obviously, Lando Norris again, because he was very, very close by. I think he was 7 tenths close by to Max Verstappen, so he could have also gotten the podium. So also Monaco will come back to that later. But if you see in the last three races, there has been only one win for Red Bull, which means that they really have to catch up the pace in winning.
Makes sense. I know Dikshat has analogy for the races. So let's hear out from him in terms of his take on the races so far.
Okay, so yes, it started with Miami when Norris won. I believe like almost all of the like pits, they all ran to celebrate because it was like all against Red Bull, right? From the past 1.5 years, they have been like it has been dreadful for almost every pit. And when they saw someone else winning, it was a happy moment for them. Again, uh, like they went to Imola. Obviously, Ferrari was the fan like home favorites and everything. But again, McLaren was the one who was coming on and on. And then we went to Monaco. And again, we saw how much better McLaren was in the starting phase. If they would have done like the first part of the race when Monaco started, there was a point it felt like Piastri might overtake Leclerc. He was on the back of Leclerc all the time, and it felt like he might overtake him. And if he would have done that, it would have been again McLaren one, and like, it would have McLaren three then, and Ferrari zero. But yeah, what I felt was it was like from the past 3, 4 races, what we have seen is just like the top five racers are not whom we normally think about. Obviously, apart from Verstappen and the other four, the two McLarens and those two Ferraris, they are bringing back the old days of F1, right? The old school fans would be loving it by like 1,000 times and seeing McLaren, especially the livery of McLaren of Monaco, like it was like on another level. And I was watching the ESPN2, which is like kids used to do the hosting for that. It was so much love to hear them out on Monaco GP and their takes. It was so fun. But even if you talk about the like later part of the like grid, it has been quite interesting. If you see, there have been too much of fights when it comes to like Haas trying to defend themselves. Even Alonso tried to back people so that Stroll can overtake in Monaco. So like it's not just the front, even the back is like burning a lot. Sonoda has been awesome in almost all the races, trying to overcome Ricardo as much as possible, which is not so great news for Danny because we all know the V Carb app. I don't even remember the name; it's so long. So yes, the Red Bull Junior team, the old AlphaTauri, they might be looking for another driver, and Daniel Ricciardo might not be the one with people performing so well in F2. He needs to step up if he wants to be in the game.
Makes sense. Before we get into the midfield, for a change, as you know, both of you highlighted, the front itself got really exciting. So and that's a rare occurrence in the past few seasons. So let's spend some more time in that. Obviously, even though for a race with narrow street tracks, and the fact that the order of the qualifying pretty much was the results. So you think that this must have been a super boring race, but if you, which, and to an extent it was in a way that if you skip off the first lap, which was red flag by the way, and we lost 4 cars, and I'm still surprised how Sainz was in the mix even after what happened. But the outcome was we had Leclerc win at home ground literally since I believe 1931 or 32 that a Monteguest driver has won the like the Monaco race. So history in the making from that perspective. Piastri doing one of his best performances on the podium, coming second, and Max Verstappen without crashing out, still not making it to the podium. A lot of aspects to take there. Diksharth, as a Ferrari fan who's been waiting for so long to taste success, let's start off with you on what do you feel about Ferrari's performance, specifically Leclerc and Sainz in this weekend. Diksharth, you're on mute again, so
Sorry. So I was a little bit irritated when the lap started. Sainz went for the lunge, which was needed for him. He made the correct move, but then he got puncture, and I thought like his race is done. Like we are not going to see two Ferraris on the podium today again. But like luck favors the hard work that like of the Ferrari team. Even there was a point when Leclerc was trying to say, "I have a plan. Do you want to listen?" And the strategy team was like, "We are not going to do anything today. We have done our pit stop already. Let's run the race. If McLaren does anything, we will respond to that." And I believe that was the only thing that helped them win this time because we, as a Ferrari fan, and also if you are not a very great Ferrari fan, we all know how much Ferrari do hang ups the fans in their strategies. But yeah, overall the car was good. It went great in qualifying, even in all the like free practices. It was awesome. But again, talking about the McLarens, they were just behind it all the time. Like Piastri was pushing I believe until like last 10 laps, and Norris was all over Sainz for almost half of the race. I was believing that Norris will overtake him somehow, but then at the last 10 laps, I was like, if Sainz was able to overtake Piastri, that would be it. If not, there's nothing going to change in order. Because even if you go till six, where Mercedes tried to play games with like Verstappen and Hamilton, they were trying to play games, but even he was not able to overtake Russell. So yeah, that was a little bit tougher circuit to overtake, as you all know, because the cars are bigger. The speed has been like enormous for everyone. No one wants to take that much kind of risk the way Magnussen took,
correct.
which led to like we all saw the debris of like Red Bull. It was like split into I don't know how many parts.
Yes.
So yeah. So overall, it was all a like silent race, but it's all like the hard work was done till the qualifying, which resulted them into a good result at the end.
Makes sense. To the point that you raised about McLaren's literally being all over the Ferraris in this case, and that's something that we've been seeing over the races as you know all the upgrades seem to be playing out. Naren, what is your take on uh, how McLaren has been shaping up? Piastri, Norris. Now has the confidence of having a win on his back, and then Piastri is obviously boosting his confidence by getting onto the podium more often than not. What's your take of how the season is going to play out with Ferrari seeming to be resurgent along with McLaren?
So I will probably talk about what went well with the other cars and what went wrong with Red Bull. There was an interesting article which I read which said that Red Bull was not quite in their space this week, primarily because of the fact that for a circuit like Monaco, your car obviously the track has a lot of high curves, which means your car needs to be stiff. What McLaren and Ferrari were able to do successfully is to make the car stiff so it can ride over curves and it can take good cornering speed, and it attacks cornering well. Monaco being the street circuit, it should attack corners well. What happened with Red Bull was during the one of the free practices, Verstappen himself said that the car is already on the nice edge. So it is a fundamental flaw with Red Bull that was stated that if they are able to make the car stiff, which they were not able to. So they said they will try to make it a little loose. So if they make it a little loose, they were losing rear grip. So they have a fundamental issue with the car right now, which needs to be fixed, and that's why Red Bull is probably a little bit withering, and that's where Ferrari and McLaren are pushing it to limit higher. They had the same issue even in 2022, but the problem is that if you're gaining 5 tenths lap quicker, you will lose 3 tenths probably the next lap. So it evens out. But overall, if you see, Max had a very good lead. That's why they were not able to close in 2023. But now all the upgrades of Ferrari and McLaren are closing in, and that's why you could see that you can see that the Red Bull's weakness opened up. So if they are not able to fix the fundamental flaw in the car, they will probably be out of the race. Now also they are in a very tight spot given the fact that one of the chief designers is leaving, and I don't know what they will do. Number two is that Red Bull has the least wind tunnel because they were first in the constructor. Ferrari and McLaren had comparatively little more wind tunnel experience than Red Bull. So which means also that they were able to make the car aerodynamically faster than Red Bull put together. So all these put together is what makes Ferrari, McLaren the best of the rest. What makes Red Bull also falter in such street circuit. What also we should think is the next race is obviously Canada. That also has a lot of curves. So if they are not upgrading the car, we will probably see a similar type of result in Canada.
So interestingly, in another sport, there was another red team that won the FA Cup after ages, Manchester United. And from their perspective, there's a recent documentary that also came out called 99 when they won the treble, which, by the way, is shout out, is a really good documentary from that perspective. In the documentary, they talk about everything was going wrong, but as long as they were winning, no one cared. Right, in the 95-96 season, and that led to what happened in 97-98 till they sort of resurged back. Do you think Red Bull is going through that similar journey? Like so far, there were things behind the scenes happening, but they were winning. So none of it was really coming out. People stuck up to it. And now we are suddenly seeing that, the nuts and the bolts are slightly coming off. And you're suddenly seeing a lot of drama that's been playing out behind the scenes is now coming up on the racetrack. Perez seems to be nowhere in the picture. Suddenly, you look at the Drivers' Championship, and he has slipped down. And you have the McLarens, the Mercedes, and obviously all actually moving up. Versus when you think Red Bull as a car should have had its 1 and 2 right at the top, as we've seen in previous years. So, do you think there's a lot playing that to the point that you also raised that the designers moving out, and what do you think what's happening in Red Bull? What is your take on it from your perspective? Diksharth, if you want to chime in.
So what I feel right now is, yes, obviously they have been overconfident. But again, they might also have been playing it out that way, that they don't want to make their car fastest for the street circuits, like for those races, because there are lesser number of races where you think of like corners or something. But there are major number of races they have a long straights where you can easily overtake and have a lot of they carry a lot of speeds. So they might be working on that. And again, like obviously as mentioned by Naren, they have a lesser win time, not just because they were P1, but also I believe there were some sanctions against them last year itself, right? If I'm correct, they would have been lesser like uh, time for to work on their wind tunnels and everything. There were some sanctions which were imposed last year
Yeah, but
itself.
I think that
So
was
that
just for
was
last year.
Okay.
Doesn't play out into this year, but anyways, to the earlier point that amongst all the teams, they still have the least amount of this thing. And
Obviously.
also
So
the fact that Ferrari and McLaren last year itself had started discussing that they were working towards the 2025 because they kind of knew
right.
2024 was out of the bag for them. So I think all of that's kind of playing in together and shaping up to where we are at. But
Obviously, like because they knew they were no chance to be on the top last year. They shifted all their resources as much as they can to the like 24 and 25, and they are seeing the results now. So obviously they have played a better game here, and they might be even looking at not at a WDC but at the teams championship. They might be looking at, because since, as you mentioned, Perez has been slipping down. So as a team, Red Bull, which is having a lot of affairs going on since the start of the season, be it Horner leaving or Helmut Marko leaving and then Newey leaving, everything, like there have been rumors coming day in and day out. Obviously, there was some true as well. So obviously, the team dynamics have been somewhere lost, and it's not. We shouldn't be surprised if we see at the mid-season we are seeing Perez being replaced by someone else.
that's an interesting take there. Naren, what's your
Because at the end of the day, they do want the team championship as well. Otherwise, it's less
correct?
obviously for Verstappen, it's a driver's championship. But for Red Bull to show their dominance, they need to give their team
They can
championship
the
as well.
constructors rep.
And the concurrent top, like out of top four, if two are being taken by Ferrari or McLaren, Red Bull is nowhere going to be in the mix. And as you mentioned about the Reds, yes, it was a day for Reds. Just to be on a like on another note, yes, yesterday was the day for Reds, be it Manchester United, be it Ducati, be it Ferrari. Every Red team won yesterday. So yeah,
Yeah, if
it was
RCB
a great day.
also had still kept red, maybe they would have had a different result, but that's a different conversation. Uh,
That was
Naren,
not
what are
yesterday.
your
No? If they
thoughts
would
with
have been
respect to
final
the
yesterday,
bold?
they would have won too.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the bold decision that Diksharth is asking Red Bull to take?
Okay, I'll probably go back to 2021 when Max Verstappen obviously won his first championship. If you see Max Verstappen win the championship by whisker, and at that point in time, it was still Sergio Perez was with them. And if you see Mercedes won the Constructors Champion, and after that we see a rise. So I would still say that given the fact that Sergio Perez has helped Red Bull in fighting for championship for 3 years, and he was not like performing inconsistently. He was probably second. He was third last year, and he was still third in the year before. So probably they will give him another chance probably till the end of this year. I think his contract is ending this year, so we do not have a second driver for Red Bull as of now next year. So they will see till end of this year to renew his contract. But then what holds true with what Dixit was saying is probably with VCARB. VCARB has this innate ability of taking the drivers out at whenever they want, and they were doing that. So probably with VCARB they will do, but with Red Bull they will probably not do. And one more thing is that yes, mentally it is a bit of a pressure for all the people inside Red Bull, including Christian Horner, considering the fact that their chief designer has left. And if you see for the past 2-3 races, I do not probably see an intent in the way Max Verstappen is actually pushing. So he was like, okay, lifting and coasting probably for all the 3 races. He was not giving that intent that he had in 2022 or even 2021 for the past 3 races. Specifically after Adrian Newey said he will be going out. So considering all of that, I see Red Bull as a team dwindling, but only time can tell how Christian Horner tries to keep everything together and probably put it. So it is still a gamble, but we'll have to wait and see.
So before we wrap up this episode, I want to go down the bold predictions thread with both of you and see that, the way Red Bull seems to be, and it might even be too early and we have to eat our own words after a few races. But where do you see if Max Verstappen were to leave Red Bull? Where do you see him going, and how does that play out with all the major teams in terms of McLaren, Ferrari, uh, Mercedes? like what would be the round robin that could play out if he were to move? Because there's going to be a huge domino effect. We know Carlos Sainz is still looking out and seats are opening up left, right, and center. So what would be your bold predictions if Verstappen were like, I'm done with Red Bull and all that's happening here. I want to go to a new place.
Can I?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Probably have to take a little bit of insights from the IPL because we have Dhoni and Rohit Sharma who will probably not leave Chennai and Mumbai, because if they leave, it is a complete trauma for both Mumbai Indians and CSK. Something similar is what I think will be with Max Verstappen also. If he does not leave, if he does not want to stay, he will probably leave to something other than F1, because he's been with Red Bull for so long. And I think starting from 2018, he's been with Red Bull since, and he's won 3 championships. So that is one way of looking at it. Either he is there with Red Bull or he leaves. The second way of looking at it is that he is probably heavily influenced by Helmut Marko himself. Probably if Helmut Marko leads to another team, he will probably tag along with Helmut Marko also. So these are probably the 2 ways in which I look at it. So let's see.
Diksharth, what are your thoughts?
So thinking of like Verstappen leaving Red Bull is like thinking of Schumacher will ever race for someone else, like except Ferrari. So yeah, it happened in the past, might happen again. Money is always in the play here. But what I feel right now, even if we switch to other team, it will be after taking a hiatus from F1, talking about maybe opportunities in WEC Endurance Series, or not IndyCar, obviously, but yeah, obviously in some drift rally racing or something. He's anyway doing esports regularly. Like in last race, he won twice in a single day. He won the 24 hours of Nürburgring and which Imola on the same day. So we don't know where he will land, but in my thought, thinking of him leaving Red Bull and joining another team as of now is too vast to think. And even like if we see the like the locks, the seats I've been logging already. With Audi might not be interested in, like they might not be splurging that amount of money on him since they have to develop the entire car. And then Ferrari already have done the Hamilton, so it will be a lot of ego clash with Leclerc already there. So even if we have to think like in a less than a 1% chance, it would be Mercedes is the only place he can go. But my heart says if he will either leave F1, take a like 3 to 4 years of break, do something else, and be back like Alonso and be here forever.
Yeah, no, that makes sense from what both of you have highlighted with how he'd want to play this out. Uh, and what we don't realize is what we see is from the championship wins. What we don't see is the years and the decades that have gone behind that to get to this point. So while we are thinking of it as a couple of years, they probably have already spent a decade and want to take a break and look at something else. And this has happened historically, right? Like Vettel, Red Bull got a couple of championships, did move on to other teams before he closed out his career, and there's still rumors that he might just come back. So you never know how this plays out. It's a very close-knit group, and people are revolving doors across the various things. But starting of the season, everyone thought this was just going to be yet another season of Red Bull dominance. And even in our sessions, we've spoken about how let's ignore the first person and then talk about the rest of the race. With the last few races, that's not been the case. And Monaco's been that tipping point where, we've seen a really good mix up, which has also led to a mix up in the total standings, while Max still leads over there, but the gap is actually approachable from a Leclerc perspective. If he continues with his dominance, Norris is right behind on his tail. Carlos Sainz is in the mix, and that's very interesting for someone who's fourth in the overall standings, still needs to figure out where he's going to be at. But that's what makes the season of F1 really open up. As we move to another continent, and we'll be in Canada on June 9th weekend. Till then, once again, thanks a lot to our panelists for taking the time out to speak about the resurgence in the F1 interest. All our viewers, I'm sure this weekend was very exciting in terms of what happened over practice, over qualifying that led to the race, and the way we've seen the results. And we're hoping it's going to be with a similar track in Canada, we're going to see similar results in how it shakes up and makes it a lot more interesting. So keep your eyes glued as we move to another continent. Feel free to share, like, subscribe, put in down the comments what you thought about what we discussed. You agree, you don't agree, all years to hear in. Till then, it's Tifosi that's going to be celebrating over the next few weeks after a long, long time. Okay, maybe not so long, but it feels like a long time. But once again, thanks everyone and good night.